Hi, folks. Welcome to Module 5, Power Mapping, or How to Pick Your Battles. This module may feel like a somewhat jarring turn from the module that we just did, which is on intrapersonal conflict management skills. Like, how do I manage my own emotions so that I feel well, so that I complete the stress cycle? So I move from the chaos of like something's wrong to oh, here are my interests and here's how I can protect them. Like now in this module, instead of focusing right here, we are focusing out on systems change. And what is I think is really exciting about systems change is that to do it well, in order to know which battles to pick, because you can't pick all of them, you have to be really savvy about who are the key decision makers and where the levers of power and who has the information you need and who has the influence you need. Power mapping helps you figure all that out. But you have to be really smart about reading the landscape. And I just think that's exciting that there's a challenge to doing conflict well. And most people don't think of conflict management as being about conversation management. And that's actually a really small part of it. First and foremost, you need to know which conversations should I be having and with whom. And you have to figure that out before you know who you need to woo and win over. Which is the more fun part of approaching conflict than thinking about it as um, who do you need, not just like who do you need to fight with, but who do you need to persuade? Who do you need to turn from an opponent into a collaborator? And how can you do that? That takes a huge amount of organizational and interpersonal sophistication. And I hope that you will find power mapping a really interesting tool for doing that. Now, as interesting as power mapping is, I think sometimes the people who are most effective at using that, and this is just an intuition of mine. This is not empirically backed. I suspect that sometimes the people who are most influential in organizations are the ones that seem the least glamorous. They're the ones who are working behind the scenes. I think there are probably some middle managers and some teachers who are like quietly changing the world. And that when something good happens, there's usually been some folks who are really good at sending email and scheduling meetings and writing meeting agendas and also chatting with people at water coolers. The power mapping, it sounds very glamorous, but when you get down into it, the people who do it best are often like kind of boring and not very impressive, but they're doing the work. And I have just tremendous admiration for that. And so I hope you'll keep an eye out for that. Like, who are the people who just like somehow they know how to move, they know how to get things done, they know how to get an organization moving, because that's kind of what power mapping is about. It's figuring out uh who needs to be in a conversation with who and why, and how do we make that happen. All right. I hope you enjoy the module.